Hi, this is Lane 8492. This is the third of three true crime story videos I'm doing today. This one is here in the state of Florida. This one is up in Bay County, Florida, in the case of Kayle Barrington Bates. His crime took place in 1982, and he's been on death row for 43 years. Kayle Barrington Bates had apparently broken into a State Farm insurance office, and of course, no one was there at the time when he broke in. And then apparently one who worked there, 24-year-old Janet Renee White, had just returned to the office after being on lunch break, and she caught Kayle Barrington Bates in there, and there he abducted her, took her to a remote area where he attempted to sexually assault, he robbed, and then eventually murdered her. This was in Bay County, Florida. That's the county of Panama City, Florida. An investigation would lead to the arrest of Kayle Barrington Bates, who was tried and convicted of robbery, kidnapping, attempted sexual assault, and first-degree murder. He was found guilty and sentenced to death for the murder of this insurance agent, Janet Renee White. And most recently, his appeal was rejected. And now Governor Ron DeSantis has signed the death warrant for Kayle Barrington Bates, setting his execution for August 19th. If this execution is carried out, it'll be the 10th execution carried out this year in the state of Florida. Even though Texas still leads the nation in carrying out death sentences with 595 executed, that's 589 men and 6 women. This year, Florida is leading the way in carrying out death sentences. Texas has only carried out 4, but they have 2 more set in Texas of Blaine Keith Milam and Robert Leslie Robertson III. Of course, that's not related to this. And of course, Florida is scheduled to carry out the execution of Edward John Zacharzewski II, which will be in 10 days on July 31st. And I've already done a true crime video on him. But Kayle Barrington Bates has been on death row for 43 years, and it's been 43 years since the crime he committed that sent him to death row in Florida. And that's a very long time, and which means Kayle Barrington Bates has been living on borrowed time for 43 years, and that is way too long. And I agree with that there is the saying, justice delayed is justice denied. And I'm sure the families of the victim, Janet Renee White, are furious that they've had to wait so long for justice to be served to her family. But from the looks of it, there'll probably be no delay because Kayle Barrington Bates has exhausted all of his appeals. This is why they usually set execution dates in Florida, because all of their appeals are officially exhausted and there's nothing left for them to appeal. Like I said, it's the appeals process that have allowed these death row inmates in Florida and other states to live on borrowed time that has kept their sentence from being inevitable. And of course, you can't forget in Mississippi this year, they executed Richard Gerald Jordan, who sat on death row for 49 years. That's almost half a century before his sentence was finally carried out. And I guess Kayle Barrington Bates will be the one to be executed after the second longest on death row, and probably the longest on death row in Florida. In fact, Kayle Barrington Bates will be the oldest executed in Florida because he'll be 67. Until that time, the oldest executed in Florida was Anthony Antoni. Of course, in 1984, Anthony Antoni was put to death in Florida's electric chair. He was convicted of a mob hit in Tampa, Florida, of a retired police officer, Richard Cloud, who was a private investigator. And at the age of 66 in 1984, Anthony Antoni was put to death in Florida's electric chair at the age of 66. Well, hope you enjoyed this video and let me know what you think. Thanks.